Good afternoon, everyone. This is Erin Smeltzer. We are excited you joined us today. I also have Lisa Levy with me, and Katerina Maroney should be joining us soon. Today, I understand that there was a request to go through 1091 and all that that entails. So we're going to do our best to go through that. If you have questions along the way, feel free to stop us. There aren't a ton of you on the call, so we can open the mic up and let anybody talk and ask questions as needed. I can't promise that I will have all the answers, but I will do my best to try and answer any kind of questions you may have. So I also have Penny Norton on as well. So she is the guru on the electronic side of this and how we register and do all of that. So if you have questions along the way, we'll make sure we can answer them to the best of our ability. So I'm going to start off by just going through kind of a broad overview. We all know the bill and the statute and all that. I'm just going to go through the overview of what we know at this point and what we know to be in law. And then what we'll do is along the way, we'll check questions, and then at the end, we'll just open it up for any questions you may have. So obviously we know that House Bill 1091 passed, and it required the office to adopt a program assessment for school readiness providers to be measured by and to see how their quality looks. Also, we know that it talks about what the tool has to have and the frequency, and we're going to go through all of that. But one of the things that statute doesn't do, and one of the best examples I've ever heard, and I'm sure you all know this by now, but statute is kind of like an order, and rule is kind of the details. So statute is like go clean your room, and rule is here's where you put your t-shirt. So if that kind of helps to understand why we have to have both and how they work together, that's what we're going to go through. So we saw the big broad statute, and obviously there's a lot more to it, but here are some of the things that we did as a result of that statute and put into rule. So frequency is one of the items. And so as rule, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but rule has passed now the state board, so it is now all set in stone, ready to go for the state. And so one of the things the rule said was that it has to be at least annually. The program assessment has to be done at least annually unless the score is above a certain level of quality. And so we did define that and we'll go about that, and we'll go through that in a second, but we did define that in rule. And so as of right now, anyone who is coming in will have to get the annual program assessment, and then in the upcoming years, they can be exempt from that annual requirement if their score is high enough. Okay, so who is required to participate? So all school readiness providers who serve children birth to 5, unless they are exempt, have to do the program assessment. They also have to receive a minimum score. So the minimum score for, hi, Kat's joining us now. So the minimum score was defined in rule. And then it also gives the ability for the coalition to waive a provider not meeting the minimum score if the provider is determined essential to the local child care capacity. So if they don't meet the contracting threshold score, then they'll have to either be a needed provider for capacity or they will not be eligible to participate in the school readiness program. And just to clarify too on that, the minimum score that was defined in rule is a 2.51 composite score. So as now with the rule passed, that score that you have to contract for the SR program is a 2.51. Okay, so moving along. So who is exempt? So a few of the things that were defined in rule were that providers serving a minimal number of school readiness children can be exempt. So obviously we had to do this by provider type. So in your large centers, your provider centers in general, you're going to see a percentage that's based off of their licensing capacity or the health and safety capacity that we see. Family child care homes are going to be a minimal number. So you can read the details about that in the rule. But so basically, providers serving a minimal number of children are exempt from this requirement as defined by rule. Exemptions also are automatically applied, but they can request to get a program assessment so that they can be eligible for the differential payment. We'll talk about that payment in a second. If an exempt provider does request to be a part of that, then all of the contracting threshold rules and the quality improvement rules and all of that we'll talk about in a bit will apply. So they basically, if they opt out of exemptions, everything applies to them now. And Kat being here also may jump in and expand on things. She is the guru at policy, so we will make sure to tag team this as best as we can. So one of the things that's a little bit tricky about the rule is we do have a contracting threshold. But that's not the only threshold we have. There is another threshold that you have to meet in order to not be on a quality improvement plan. So you can kind of see like a tiered approach to this, where we have those who just get in, and then those who, so those that get in but don't meet a certain level of quality, they have to be on a quality improvement plan. But those who get in with a contract and are above that second threshold, they just kind of exist in the school readiness program and are eligible for differentials. So the quality improvement plan is going to look a lot like PFP did, a lot of the same strategies, a lot of the same kind of ideas behind it, but with a lot more flexibility at the local level. So if a provider does fall within that range, and Kat, remind me again, quality improvement range is 3?
It's up to a 3, yeah.
So anybody who gets the contract and is above the 2.51 and then is below a 3 will have to be on that quality improvement plan. And so while they're on the plan, the strategies will look very similar to PFP, with you choosing as the coalition on what supports you think are necessary for the teachers who are scoring low. And they'll have to be on that plan for at least a year. Now, at the end of that plan, they have to have moved their score up. They have to be above the 3, or they're no longer eligible to participate in the program. So we give them a year to get their score above that second threshold, or they're not able to participate. Now, once they're there, once they're above the 3, they can participate and get their next year's contract. However, if they fall below it again, they can only go below that 3 and be on a quality improvement plan for 2 years in a 5-year period. So that is a little bit of quality assurance to make sure that we are moving the quality up, because it won't allow a provider to be on a quality improvement plan for more than those 2 years in a 5-year period, and not ever back to back. Because after a quality improvement plan, they have to get the score up to a 3 to get off of it and get another contract. I know that's a bit confusing, so we can stop and ask questions in a moment, but just to let you know kind of the scope of what a quality improvement plan is intended to do. So we will allow an exception for a provider to be on a quality improvement plan if they are deemed essential to meeting capacity. So there is obviously these nuances in here in order to make sure that we have the correct capacity for the state. So this is the fun part. Differential payments are now in place. So starting July 1st, 2019, and this is actually not the actual amount is being determined in rule right now. But no more, so a provider can get up to 15% of a differential on top of their regular SR payment. However, 5% of that, and no more than 5% of that, can also be given to child assessment. So we'll go into the details of that in a second. But the big idea on this is that no one can exceed 15% above their school readiness rate with this differential payment. And we know we have others, Gold Seal and some local quality initiatives that come in, but for the purposes of the differential rate set in House Bill 1091 and the corresponding rules, it may not exceed 15%. So if they fall below the minimum threshold for contracting, but they're considered essential for meeting capacity needs, they are not eligible for that differential payment. Just some clarification. All right. So that's the program assessment side of it, but I alluded to this a bit in the differential slide. There is another part of the bill that talks about child assessments. Now, part of what they lay out in the statute about child assessments are the following things. They have to meet certain criteria to be an appropriate assessment tool. So the office is going to go through procurement. We're in the process of getting that started, and we will have the appropriate tools that are allowable for this differential to be counted for. So if they choose a tool that's not approved through that procurement, they will not be eligible for this differential because it doesn't meet the statutory requirements. One of the things that is different about this is that for them to get the differential, it has to be conducted 3 times a year. I know historically in PSP we've only done twice, but this will be done 3 times a year. Also, the data must be reliable, which means the observers must be reliable to be able to be eligible for this. And the information has to be able to be accessed through the statewide information system, which for we program nerds on the side of the world, this is really exciting because that means that all screening and assessment data will be available to parents on July 1st, 2019. So it's a big leap for us to be able to have that and have all of this assessment data coming into the statewide system and parents to actually know and be able to understand that data and make good choices. So we're really excited about that. It's going to be a huge undertaking on this side. We're working hard on it, but that is a win for sure for us. So before I go into kind of where we are and what's happening, we want to give you an update on where we are, but I want to stop and ask questions or see what questions we may have in the meantime. Let me go back. Let's look at questions. And I will just pause for a second and give you time to ask specific questions, and then we'll kind of show you an update of where we are at the state right now. Okay, just to clarify, we have a question about what has to be conducted 3 times a year. And so this would be the child assessment. So I'm just going to use TS Gold for an example. So they have checkpoints. So if you were using that tool, you would have to do 3 checkpoints within the school readiness program contract year to be eligible for this differential. If you only do 2, then that means you're out of compliance with what the contract requires and you would be eligible for the differential. Okay, let me read these other ones. Hold on just a moment. Okay, so we have a question about, Chrissy, this is a really great question. So this is really, she's talking about the specifics on doing observations and that for 1920, what do we do if a program opens and they don't have, the teachers haven't been in there for 30 days because that is part of the requirement that a teacher has to be in the classroom for 30 days before they're observed. So should you wait for 30 days before the provider is assessed? And so how the rule is written with exemptions is when you start a new contract with a provider who has no SR children enrolled, they technically would be exempt because they haven't met the percentage of enrollment of SR kids to make them required to do the assessment. And so once they cross that exemption threshold percentage, and Kat, I don't know if you want to look that up and give that to them, once you cross that percentage, then from that point you have 30 days to be assessed. And so that gives you some time to get the provider, obviously they'll have teachers in and they'll be enrolling kids, but that gives them a little bit of time to get those teachers in and acquainted before you go in to do the observation. And the timelines aren't right on fresh on my mind, but I know there's a certain date, they have a certain amount of time to notify the provider that they've lost their exemption. And then they have 30 days from the point that they're notified to get that observation done. So there's some built-in timelines, and we can give you the specifics of those, but there's some built-in timelines to make them give the time that you need to let a provider know, 1, you're not exempt anymore, and 2, here's how long we have to get your observation done. So we built in some space for that. We will get the exemption percentage for the centers and
20%. It's in the rule.
Okay, so in the rule it's 20% for everybody besides family child care homes.
And it's 2 or fewer.
And 2 or fewer for family child care homes. So the percentage, again, just to go back to what I said earlier, that percentage is going to be automatically calculated based off of what their capacity comes in at from their health and safety inspection and their current SR enrollment. So EFS Mod will have that calculation going. So as soon as they cross it, there'll be a notification that we need to make sure we're getting them observed. And so knowing that things go up and down, the rule says once they've crossed the threshold, or the guidance, I'm not sure if it's the guidance rule, but once they've crossed that threshold in the fiscal year, they can't go back under. So once you are no longer exempt, then you are required to have the program assessment for that year, even if you fall back under, just so we don't have the up and down that we see a lot in our enrollment. will there be a statewide TSG, for example? What is the statewide information system, or is that just the portal? So when we say that everything has to be in the statewide information system, we mean that all of the assessment tools that make it through procurement, all of that data will roll into EFS Mod so that parents can access it through the parent portal. How is the reliability of data determined? Well, providers have to show completion of passing integrated reliability. Dominique, that's a great question, and yes. So, and we'll talk about this in our next steps, and if I can get it pulled up, I'll show you kind of a tentative game plan of what we're thinking. But reliability will be a part of the verification that we will do on that you as a coalition will do on the contracting side before you allow them to receive that differential. So we have a kind of a process flow mapped out for that, and we'll try to, if we have time, we'll show you that later. But yes, integrated reliability will have to be verified before the provider is eligible for the differential. These are really great questions. All right, we've got another one. What if a new school opened and they don't have a provider ID and extension? How can they register for their assessments in the system? That's a great question. So we actually talked about this last Friday. EFS Mod, as they go in to start registering for or applying to be a provider, will automatically assign a number and a unique identifier. So right now, EFS and the SRPA system that you currently are using, we're working with those two teams to make sure that we have unique identifiers for the providers. And so even if they go in just to register and make it through the part of the contract that they need to tell them to go get a program assessment, we'll have that data ready to go to be sent over to the program assessment side of the world, so they'll be in the system ready to go. So right now, they don't have to do the program assessment as a prerequisite for contracting, so it's not, the data is not being shared as regularly, but once it becomes a prerequisite for contracting, the data will be shipped over to the SRPA system very quickly. So as soon as they go in to apply within the day or within the next few days, they should be able to have all their stuff set up and ready in the program assessment system to do that observation or get that assessment registration completed. I know that was a lot. So Penny, you're on. I just want to make sure, do you have anything you want to add to that last question?
Penny, you are muted. You can speak now.
I was just going to add to the point that we hope to be able to have new providers register as early as January. That's our goal.
Thank you for that, Penny. So currently with when EFS Mod, the new system launched, the data transferring had a little glitch in it. So current providers can still go in and do all of the things they need to do, but new providers will have to hold off for about a month and a half to get into the system so we can get them registered. And we're looking at January for new providers to come in. Again, it's not a prerequisite this year. You can still execute a contract with them this year, so it doesn't hold up any of your timeline. But being able to assess them for the 19-20 year won't be able to happen until around January. So if you have questions and want more details about that, you can reach out to Penny or me, and we'll make sure we clarify.
And Penny, we're leaving you unmuted in case that you want to add to what Erin is explaining.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in right now, so I'm going to just move into next steps and kind of an update of where we are as a state. Back over here. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That did not go in the direction it's supposed to go. Okay, here we go. So currently, in order to really try to beef up our capacity for what we measure in program assessment, we did buy 20,000 users on a license for My Teachstone. Right now, we only have around 4,000 people accessing that system. So we really want to see that getting beefed up. Our goal is, we've given coalitions and some of the program staff the amount that you have for your area, and then we're getting emails back and putting them into the system for the providers to use. However, it's not being used as rampantly. So what we may do soon is kind of an all-call for anybody who may want to get into it. But we're not quite sure if we're going to do that. We're going to take a look at it in the next month or so to see if it's ramping up. But we really would encourage, I know you can't make someone access the system, but we really hope that you'll be encouraging providers to get in there and use this tool because it's really brilliant and has exemplar videos and free classes. They're in English and in Spanish, and it really is like having your own class coach at your fingertips. So we really hope that we will see that number go up, and we really hope people will use it to help get just a better understanding of the class tool. So upcoming trainings that we have 2 infant observer trainings coming up, 2 toddler observer trainings coming up, a pre-K observer training coming up. We have 2 cohorts of an infant affiliate trainer coming up, 2 cohorts of toddler, and 2 cohorts of pre-K affiliate trainer trainings coming up. So these are the state's effort to really try to help make sure that you are all equipped and ready to go to do all of this work, because we know it's a lot to take on. And again, I'm sure you're aware of this, but the office pays for all of these trainings, so this will not be at any cost to you. But these are the upcoming trainings that we're going to have. And then just as an update of where we are as a state, as of this point, we have about 3,400 program assessments that have been completed. It looks like 294 of them have been for the program assessment requirement. And this seems kind of where we think we should be, because we know that everybody's been really focusing on getting performance funding updated. And so that 3,400 number is probably assessments that can be used for both PSP and for SRPA. So we're not super concerned about that, but just to give an update of where we are as a state, we want to make sure that we are moving along, because we have about 20,000 to get done before contracting. So hopefully if you're needing some help or something's going on, you're reaching out for help and letting us know if we can help with anything or help build capacity of trainers if you need it. I'm going to stop for a second and check questions. Christy. Okay. Christy said, does the 72-hour school reporting requirement include weekends and holidays? I'm going to ask Kat to check that. And what Christy's referring to is the point where when they have an observation done, they have to get it into the system, the data system, within 72 hours of doing the observation. So Kat's taking a look. And her follow-up on that was, lots of questions rolling in. Just a second. Yep. Just could get more people into that. So as Kat's checking that, Christy, I'm going to go to your next one where it says we could get more people in my Teach Zone faster if the turnaround time was less than a month. It's tricky to get them in there, but it's not very quick. Okay, and I appreciate that feedback, Christy. We'll reach out to Intrica and just see if there is any way. I know we set up the month to give kind of a 1 import time frame for Teach Zone because it's a lot to get all those files in. But if there is a way we can do some midpoint check-in or mid-month check-ins and get some other email addresses in, I'll see if we can do that. So I'm looking at Lisa, so she'll help me remember to ask Intrica if there is a way to get that set up a bit. Let's see. Let me stop and take a second to look at these, and we'll get right back. Okay, another question is, what is, if they're done annually unless they've met a certain score, and the score would be a composite score of a 5. So if they hit a 5 or higher, they can do every other year for their program assessment requirement. Will there be my Teach Zone feedback strategies training coming up? I will follow up with that, Dominique, and let you know. I will have to ask Intrica about that, but from the top of my head, I don't believe that there is one. But if we need some additional training on that, let me know and we'll see what we can do. Okay. Okay. So one of the questions, and that leads into kind of our next slide, and I'll go back to the other one, but one of the questions was, do we have anybody that's going to help with capacity? And so the ITB that I have here is to let you know, we have this out on the street right now, and what we have put out is a procurement to have statewide term contracts that will allow you, as soon as you feel like you've hit capacity or you feel like you may want to use your staff to do something else, this term contract will allow you to access vendors to expand your observer capacity as well as your coaching capacity. So the ITB is out there right now for procurement, and we are going to approve observers and coaches on these term contracts for you to be able to use at a negotiated rate, so that if you want to move stuff around to coaching instead of doing observations or vice versa, you'll have the flexibility to do that through these vendor contracts. So that's out on the street, should be closing pretty soon, and then we'll have those up and rolling hopefully within a couple of months after the ITB closes. Those are pretty quick. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have that ready to go, and then those will be 3-year contracts, so you'll be able to use them in the upcoming years as well. Okay. So some upcoming steps on this. Actually, let me scoot back and do just our progress on child assessment. So again, I mentioned we are going through procurement right now. We're wrapping up the scopes and the contract to have those tools re-procured. And the reason we have to do this is obviously because we have to build the capacity to import the data into ESS Mod, so that's part of the procurement. So we're mapping out all the processes of how that will work and what will be the right flow to be able to set up good data matching scenarios for all of this information going in and out. And then our development timeline right now is under work, and we're hoping, again, we have to have it all in place by July. So we're hoping to have it up and ready for testing way sooner than that. So that's what's in progress right now for the child assessment side of it. And some more updates. So like I said about the ITB, very soon you'll be seeing an email come out that has a draft provider letter. So we went ahead and drafted a letter for you. It's really easy for you to go in and make modifications if you need to, but it gives you the information that we think is really necessary for providers to know what to do and what to expect now that the rule has passed. Again, we wish we could communicate as soon as things happen, but unfortunately, because we have rule promulgation to follow, we can't always give information out until it's set in stone. And as of right now, Kat and her team have really been working really hard to get this done quickly, but we finally got it through October State Board. So we're finally at liberty to really speak to the specifics of what the statute requires and what the rule requires. So that letter will be coming soon. I will believe in the next few weeks it will come in the Admin Weekly. And you can use that just to, it did go out in the Admin Weekly. Great. See, right ahead of things. It did go out. And so it should be with the coalition right now. You should have it in, whoever gets your Admin Weekly should have access to that. And this is for you to use to send out to your providers, again, just to give information about what happened with the rule. And also, the reason that we're not sending it from the office is we really felt like you know your providers best. And so we felt like it would be best for you to distribute the communication as needed based off of the level of capacity you've already built in your community. After we've given some time for that, for you to go ahead and communicate as needed, we will then follow with some monthly provider communication letters. And we'll make sure to give you a preview in the Admin Weekly so you can give us updates and adjustments to the letter if you feel there needs to be revisions. But we will start doing some statewide provider communication after giving you some time to go ahead and meet with providers and do the communication on the front lines as best as you feel is necessary for your community. So those are upcoming. Let's go into here and we will see the other questions. Okay. How do we handle communication of scores to providers? We've completed several assessments and providers are asking of their results. I know the rule requires that we do that within 14 days. So what we are working on in the SRPA system is that the score will come back to the providers on that side. And Penny, do you want to speak to that a bit on kind of the game plan for the score coming back to providers?
Sure. We'll know a time frame for that this afternoon after our meeting with Wells. But once the composites or the functionality to generate a composite, that will happen in Wells. That will transfer back to the Infinity system or where the registrations are located on the score review tab. And there is a feature there that allows the coalition to for the provider to view their composite, and it would be only the composite. It's not the actual observation notes and things like that. So if they had a 5.67, that's what they would see in the system. But you don't have to make it available. If you choose to notify them in some other way, you can do that, but that option will be in the system. Again, once the functionality to generate the composite is enabled, and I'll have a time frame on that from later this afternoon, and will be updated at the PFP program assessment webinar on Thursday.
Okay. Thanks, Penny.
Mm-hmm.
And a follow-up question, well, not follow-up question, another question is the final copy of the rule and the handbook on the OEL website.
Mm-hmm.
And Kat, do you mind telling them where that's located?
It's not up there yet, but because we were trying to wait till it gets a little bit more final, it's not been approved by Department of State. It was passed by the State Board of Education, so yes, technically it's not going to change, but we have to wait a little bit before it gets posted up to the Florida Administrative Weekly. So we're going to try to get that up in the next couple weeks.
And if you could we give them, if they request it, can we give them a version? So if you, is the latest version of the rule website?
No.
Okay.
They need it. It's a new rule, so it's not on FAR. So that's why they need to request it through us.
Okay.
They can email OEL questions, and we can send it. But it should be posted in the next week or so.
Okay. So if you need it immediately, you can email OEL questions, but it should be up within the next week or so. And yes, we can send a copy of the PowerPoint out. So I'm going to take a second and just wait for more questions. And again, if you want to raise your hand so you can ask a question verbally, that's fine too. But we'll just pause for a moment and give you some time to type questions in, and then we will come back. Okay, and while we're waiting, just to follow up, we did get an answer to the 72 hours. The 72 hours of getting that input does exclude federal holidays, but it does include weekends. So just as a note on that, that would need to be in within 72 hours, but if there is a federal holiday, it does exclude that. Okay, we'll pause for a second and see if we see some more questions coming in. Okay, so just again reiterating, we will make sure you get this PowerPoint. We'll probably just send it out in an email after we're done. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I don't see any more questions coming in, and I don't see any hands raised. So I'm just going to take a second, double check that, and seeing none. As always, if you have questions, reach out to Lisette or Monique, and we will make sure to answer that. Oh, okay, another question came in. If a provider is exempt, should their registration be approved in the OEL system? So this is kind of it has a process to answer this. So right now, because the exemptions are not being calculated in the EFS system, I would say everyone could go ahead and register in the system, and that way you have them in there. And then if you don't need them to be assessed, it's not going to hurt for them to be sitting in the system. As we move forward, we will have the data file of all providers going over with information about exemption to the SRPA system. And so it will show the ones who need observations, but it will allow you to observe those who may be exempt and opting in to being assessed, but that will be in the future. So in this current moment, if you need someone to be in the system and they're not, let us know, but everyone should be going over to the system now, and they can go ahead and register and be in there. It doesn't hurt to have them in there, but if they're not requiring assessment, they don't have to be in there. So I guess the answer on that is they don't need to be in there, but their information is there in case you do want to assess them or in case they opt into assessment. So it's kind of your call on moving forward and taking action with whether or not you want them to register. Sorry, I know it was kind of a hard question to answer, so I don't know if that made sense, but let me know, Allison, if that wasn't clear. Why is the negative climate score not being calculated in the composite score? Kelly, that's a good question. So the reason that we did that after researching some other another state and also talking to Teachstone is that because negative climate, when you do the inverse of the score, it's typically pretty low. And so when you do the inverse, it actually kind of inflates the emotional support score. And so because of that inflation, it's not really a true accurate picture. And Penny, I'm going to let you chime in because I may not be saying that all the way exactly the way that we learned. But basically the idea is that when you take the inverse of negative climate, it does inflate the score so much that it's not always really accurate of what you're saying. And Penny, do you want to add to that?
No, just that that's correct. That was the guidance that we received when we investigated, was that it tends to overinflate because you don't see negative climate too, high often. It's usually a 1 or a 2, and when you inverse that, it's a 7 or an 8, a 6 or a 7. So that's exactly why, just what you said.
Okay. Kelly, let us know if that didn't answer, or if you have a follow-up. We'll give you a second for that. And we will take just another second to make sure we don't have follow-ups, and if not, we'll wrap up. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in, so we will call this to a close. Again, this is not the end of your time for questions. Feel free to reach out. You have Kat's team, you have our team. If there's anything you need in the meantime, we want to make sure you have all the support you need as we start to really get into kind of the heavy part of the year where we're really trying to knock all this out. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. And with that,
I just want to remind you that this Thursday we will have Zach Gibson in our webinar, and he basically is going to be talking about the memorandum of understanding that exists between agencies and how you can take advantage from it. And so if you are part of the Inclusion Network, that would be very useful to you. But I also see as an infant and toddler specialist being able to use this somehow in the future. So don't miss it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is that we have posted, and we're going to be posting all these webinars that we're doing with you on our website under state initiatives in the inclusion page. You will see all these webinars for you to have access and share them and whatever you need to do with them.
Okay. With that, thank you so much for all that you do, and reach out if we can help in any way. Have a great afternoon.